morning, everybody. How are you?
Good morning, and thanks.
This is Mark Hare with Aero Systems Integration. As Kelly mentioned, I'm the Solution Architect Manager, and we are very excited to introduce our latest partner in addition to our portfolio. As many of you may or may not know, Aero has a very broad portfolio of partners in the space of unified communications, contact center, data center, et cetera. But we felt there was some very valuable reasons that we look to add five nines to our portfolio. Just to name a couple of those, and we'll get a little bit deeper into these as we go through the discussion. But five nines brings a very powerful ability to execute on their cloud-based contact center and offers. Along with a ease of the deployment in time to execute that deployment, make it a very powerful solution as well. And lastly, I'll point out their integration points throughout the solution to CRM applications or business applications within a customer's environment are another very very key reason that we felt it was important for us to add five nine to our portfolio. So with that, as I get our navigation moving along here through the presentation, the topics we're going to work through, as the team and Chris and I were setting up for the discussion today, we wanted to make sure that we had kind of a level set around the definition of a cloud. So we'll start there, just a little brief background to make sure we get everybody on the same page. Then we'll talk about and discuss some of the trends that we're seeing that are driving contact centers to the cloud and really driving contact centers really across the industry. But we're seeing the movement to the cloud kind of being driven by the digital transformation a little bit as well. Then we'll get a little bit more into the benefits in some background around five nine with the benefits of the cloud, things that you should consider when making the move, and then how to make that move and how we can be successful as a team, Aero five nines and you as your business leaders. So as we look to define the cloud, right, we hear this quite a bit, right? Hey, my CIO has come to me and said we need to start looking at the cloud for a place to deploy some of our contact center, right? And many businesses are like, okay, great, let's do it. You go out and you start doing some research, and lo and behold, you find tons of information around the cloud and what it is. So, I look to a definition by NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, that defines a number of things in the technology space. And they have some characteristics, some deployment models and service models that really seem to kind of make it clear as to what the cloud is, right? The characteristics that come forward are on-demand self-service, right? And this is ease of deployment and provisioning, broad network access, right? Capabilities easily available over any network, pooling of resources, right? So taking advantage of resources in pooling to scale up, down, in different directions from a computing perspective. Rapid elasticity, right? This is the flexibility of that environment. And then ultimately, when you're doing that, there has to be a way to measure the service, and be it for increases or decreases, based on say spikes within a calendar year to the business, different business models that are changing. Chris, would you agree? As we look at the 5.9 solution, are you in agreement that we meet these characteristics with the 5.9 cloud solution?
Yeah, we absolutely do, and they're not easy to meet. That's the other challenge. It's you can't just throw an application like a contact center into the cloud and say we're good to go and thumbs up. And I think that this addresses that there's a lot of complexities that the solution has to make sure are in place in those infrastructure and application pieces. And so, over the past 15 years, 5.9's really grown to make sure we're addressing really this true definition of what cloud computing is.
So along with the characteristics, and as we look at kind of the next major component that NIST uses to define cloud computing, there's deployment models, right? So those models of how you access the service. Private cloud being one. This is usually I'll refer to it as a point-to-point type configuration, and the ability to really tighten. All can be very much secured, and all can be very much not secure, unsecured if not provisioned correctly, and even a private cloud with a direct connection can be unsecured if not provisioned correctly. So we'll be careful as we discuss that security topic. But private cloud brings that connection of point-to-point connectivity. A community cloud becomes really an infrastructure that's provisioned for many individuals or many businesses looking for the same service, right, or the same output. So similar security requirements, similar policy requirements, compliance requirements, and considerations kind of bring that community cloud. This might be a collaboration, say, of certain financial institutions in all subscribing to a same and similar type of service. Public cloud, pretty familiar, I think, in most minds by way of the public internet, right? A public connection to a cloud, typically open to anyone and everyone for access to certain information and certain data through any public connection, right? Any Starbucks or Caribou, if that's your like, and the access there back to the common cloud services that fall behind that. And probably one that's I don't know if I'd say it's the most common, but becomes fairly common is a hybrid cloud, right? So this is a mix and or combination of any of the three above. And Chris, as we look at the 5.9 environment, how does 5.9 align to these four deployment models in providing the solutions out to your clients and customers?
This has been an area actually that's been very interesting, because no one of these areas is the answer for all of the customers. And in a lot of ways, our customers are defining their models of how they want to use the solution. We're dealing with large financial institutions where security is so paramount, everything's all going over private MPLS, either theirs or private or components that we actually provide. But I like to say that with all that connectivity comes an expense, and we've got other customers who are running in more of a hybrid environment, where the primary contact center, may have a MPLS connection, but they might have a satellite office with, say, 25 agents, and they may go over a different type of connection, maybe some kind of VPN, something a little less expensive, but give them the same level of security. So what we've learned is we need to be able to address the customer's needs, the customer security requirements, and really we have to then deliver it in all these different methods. We certainly have some customers who are doing everything over the public internet. It's an option, and really I think that's mostly a financial decision. But I will say this: most of our enterprise customers are using a combination of the private cloud and hybrid model, which is certainly the most popular. But we, as a company, feel we need to be flexible to meet our customers' needs and offer all the options.
And so the beauty of that, I think that Chris mentions is the flexibility, right? So we will work with you and your business to determine which deployment model best meets your needs, which I think is key as you're looking at a cloud contact center solution provider. Let me get there. So the last major component that NIST defines with cloud computing is a service model. You'll see, infrastructure as a service, right? This may be nothing more than a truly a data center infrastructure, a cage and or a rack that you place your physical equipment and platforms in and software operating systems and software onto. The platform as a service may be taking that infrastructure a step further, and you're simply leasing or renting the platform itself, the hardware, the server infrastructure, the virtualized server infrastructure, and maybe even the operating system is deployed on there, and you're simply leveraging that environment to deploy your software solution. And then really where the definition in kind of 5.9 fits is that software as a service is, it's really leveraging the other two, because there's a data center environment that exists behind for resiliency and reliability, but out to the customer, you're leveraging the benefit of the software as a service to take advantage of the contact center software that 5.9 is managing behind the scenes for you. Chris, I'll kind of give you the opportunity to speak to that as well, and how 5.9 kind of brings all of these together for the benefit of the customers.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Like, we're perceived as software as a service, and that's how it should be. If you're a customer and you log into the 5.9 portal and you have access to control your call center, it's all software from your perspective. But really behind the scenes are the other components. And they're significant from an infrastructure point of view, where we're running tens of thousands of agents at any given time and processing millions of interactions. But that infrastructure goes beyond that processing. It's interfacing to multiple carriers, for example, to provide the voice components, and failover between those carriers, even failover for your toll-free numbers. All those components really are sitting behind the scenes and should be taken for granted by our customers. But that platform and infrastructure piece is really the heart and power of what we do. It's that, it's that underlying thing that drives all of this. But our customers just say, hey, I can log in and I have all this flexibility and I have all this power at my fingertips right through my data connection. So it's really, we consider ourselves a combination of these things. That is the application, but our customers just get the simple side of it and log in from the concept of a software as a service.
Yeah, and it goes back to some the reasons that I mentioned. We established the partnership with 5.9, right? The ease of deployment, right? And that easiness is extended out to the consumers, out to the customers, right? And really then makes the ability to execute easy as well. So
one thing one thing we have found is in some ways, we're, as an infrastructure piece of this, we're able to provide services that weren't necessarily available to the average enterprise, mostly because of cost factors. So some of that, think about, geographic redundancy when you're running switches. Adding another switch is a pretty big, or multiple switches across a network can be a bit of a challenge. And really, that infrastructure piece can deliver things that might have been out of reach for enterprises, but are now just part of our solution. So I just want to add that piece in there.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. So with that understanding, what we'd like to do is get a little understanding of you, our audience, and see where you understand and believe you're at from the current use of the cloud. In just a second here, I'll have Kelly launch a an online, a live poll for you to respond to. And the first poll here is in question is, have you currently adopted the use of, cloud contact center in your business model? You'll have 4 options to select from, and we'd be happy to hear back from you here as to what you currently have and are experiencing in your business. Kelly, if you can go ahead and launch the first question. We'll give you about 3 seconds. No, okay, we'll give you 30 seconds to think about this and respond here for a moment. Kelly, are you seeing responses come in? And
yep, I think we are probably about done, so I'm going to close it.
Good. So, and with question 1, there always has to be question 2, right? So, as you look at your future plans for cloud adoption, and think about your business, do you plan to deploy any contact center cloud solutions? And this could be, a individual component, an individual application, maybe an outbound application, or a channel, an individual channel, or it could be a full-on cloud contact center solution. So as you think about that, and in your future plans, do you see yourself that taking place in 6 to 12, 12 to 18, 18 to 24 months, or even beyond 24 months? Kelly, if you can launch our second question, that'd be great. Again, we'll give you 20, 30 seconds here to respond and talk a little bit about the trends. Are we looking good there, Kelly?
Yep, I think we have all the answers.
Awesome. So let's dig a little bit into the trends that are driving the enhancements to the contact center, and in turn the movement to the cloud contact center. There's a term that's come into the market probably in the last 12 to 24 months, and hasn't been all too long, maybe a little bit longer, referred to as digital engagement and digital transformation. There's clearly a shift, right, of interactions from voice to digital. Now, I'll be the first one to say this, and I think the first one to say this years and years ago. Voice isn't going away. It's not going to happen. Now that said, voice is very much going to be complemented by other modes of communication, right? Looking way back 10 years ago, web chat, smartphone apps with your financial organizations or your insurance organizations, or any other organizations, social media, email's been in place for a while and rolled in, but the others not so much. And today, those digital interactions need to be accounted for, right? And you have to be able to bring those into your contact center structure and handle those in an effective and efficient manner, and even begin to adopt a good, solid, holistic view of all of those transactions and interactions that are happening for each individual that's interacting with you. So, Chris, I'd like to get your perspective on this to just to make sure that you're seeing you're seeing the same transition in the same requests being made of businesses to enhance their modes of communication and interactions with their customers.
Yeah, and for this one, I like to try and walk in the shoes and listen to the inner dialogue of the contact center manager or the IT staff for the call center and what they're thinking. And my first thought is, holy smoke, how did things get so complex so quickly? I like to think of my own family here, and my own analogy is I use the telephone. When I need help, I use the telephone. So like you said, voice is still king. But my wife definitely uses a ton of web chat and email. And I'm like, okay, we've mostly been handling those things. But then I look at my kids, and they're using tons of channels. And so we look at this as a challenge to the contact center, like, okay, all of a sudden I've got many more than what we used to call the traditional channels. And also, what's next? Like there's new channels popping up and new ways that people are interacting and seeking help. And sometimes they ask a social question and think they're going to get a response from the actual vendor. All that's actually happening. And the other challenge back to the inner dialogue of the contact center manager is, how do I deal with this? How do I change my contact center to actually be able to consume and manage all these other channels? It's a big, complicated thing right now.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah, and Chris, you touched on a number of the drivers that are. I can get the slide to move for me here. Those drivers that are really leading the digital engagement, right? And it's interesting that the underlying technology, I think, is what today's business underlying technology. We're definitely advancing, right? Software-defined scale, the security, web, very open APIs. That is what's driving this, but I think it's also what's driving the digital engagement need, and it's also what I think is driving some movements to the cloud, because I'm finding that the business's underlying technology isn't quite there to support it. So there may be some heavy lifting in order to be able to handle the digital engagement for my customers, right? For my clients, and as I'm looking at this from a contact center manager perspective, right? So how do we do that, and how do we make that move? Well, that's some of that shift to the cloud, right? And the reason is some of the technology refresh requirements are daunting. And for a business to be able to make that holistic move becomes very challenging. So moving to the cloud, adopting the cloud, and taking a cloud phased approach is what we're seeing some businesses do. And I'm sharing a little bit of data here that's dated, but I'm sharing it because it's very, very relevant, and it proves our point, right? Gartner expected a movements from a contact center as a service population to increase by 23%. I believe it was actually more than that between 2012 and 2016. There's from DMG Consulting, there's talks of the percentage of contact center seats overall in the cloud will be up from 6% from 2011 and overall 18%. I mean, those numbers actually were eclipsed a little bit as we look at the numbers from the cloud. So clearly there's been acceptance, and these predictions, years back on these certain market drivers are true, and even more so today. And Chris, as you look at it, and you see it from your perspective at Five Nines. I mean, you've been at Five Nines since, goodness, 2000, quite some time, right? 2003, 2000, yeah. 2002. So you've been through this timeline and through this experience firsthand. So I'd love to hear what you can share about the growth and about how these recent digital channels are driving that movement to the cloud as well.
And I was telling Mark earlier, when we were talking, when we first, we're launching Five9, and I think I naively would say every now and then, in 5 years, who's not going to have a cloud contact center? And it's what you're seeing here in this graph is it did take a little while, and we're starting to see that hockey stick effect. And as Mark's saying, that it's being driven by those digital channels. It's being driven by the fact that customers are actually defining the ways they want assistance from companies. versus companies saying, hey, you can call my phone number and that's it. And we need to keep up. And they're also quite vocal with all the social ways socially you can complain about customer service. It's quite remarkable. So the complexity challenge and the need to make it easy, the need to offer all these new channels that integrate these channels has really been what's caused this really uptick in the adoption. It's been quite remarkable. I think, it's, as these are older slides, and as Mark mentioned, these have actually been eclipsed. It's just accelerating. And we'll talk a little bit about, how we're addressing that and why it's working in a couple more slides.
Yeah, and again, as Chris mentioned, these are dated, and we looked at that and purposely included them to help really kind of prove that point of the adoption. So I think we've got a couple more questions here, but what I'd like to do before that, because I think I jumped through it, was I'd be curious to see the responses to question 1 and question 2. Kelly, I think you can tee that up for us, and then we'll look at a couple more questions just around the types of interactions you're having with your customers today. So Kelly, is that something we can rewind to? Are we able to do that, or?
Yep, I just kind of launched
see those results.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
All right, let me know when you can see it.
We have 71%.
Yep.
So I'm not seeing those through.
So Mark, I'll read them out to you. So we had 71% actually who have not adopted use of the call center at all. 18% have done at least one application, and a little more at 4%, and 7% is a lot. So these numbers are probably a little different from what we're seeing on some of the older graphs, but not terribly surprising either.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, and I think I see it now. So what's the, as we look at the plans for future adoption of cloud, Kelly, what were those results? So I see we've got 21% in a pretty short time frame, which leads me to think you're already in some good planning phases, which is great. 12 to 18 months. That where in one way I think that's a long time, a long ways out. The other half of me feels like, boy, that's tomorrow. So there's a lot of planning that needs to go into it. 18 to 24 months. That's a good cycle, because you're at the point where you can drive those models and have some good discussions from a consultation perspective to make sure that you're taking best advantage of what's out there. And then more than 24 months, you've got some pretty good runway as well to be able to consider what's coming. And a motto that we have here at Arrow is 5 years out. So we're always challenging you to look beyond today, beyond tomorrow, and identify what your environment, what the business is going to look like and going to need in 5 years from now. So with all of these, as you're looking short term and even in long term, we challenge you to keep those thoughts in mind as well. So let's move to the next couple questions around your current interactions. First question is just that: what type of interactions do you currently have and engage with your customers around? Please and select all of the options if you could that apply. And Kelly, I'll ask if you can launch this poll, and then we can probably roll right into the results of this one once we close the poll out. I see some pretty good numbers coming in. Well, we've got a pretty good voting pool that's responded. Thank you for that. So Actually, up until just a second ago, we had voice was pegged at 100%, and Chris and I actually talked about this a little bit. We weren't going to put voice, and Chris is like, well, there may be some folks out there that are that are managing email and chat and don't yet have that voice interaction. So let's include it, and I'm glad we did. So 96% voice already, 78% email, and the the other question starts to become is that a is that a universal queue? We're not going to ask that question today, but that's just something to think about how you're managing those independently or siloed versus versus in a single model, single routing environment, which obviously a cloud solution can offer. Let's move to the next question. Oh, and then we had, I'm sorry, I skipped. Web chat was 48%. That's almost 50%. That's a good amount. And SMS text and instant messaging, 15%. You'll notice we left out social media, right? As Chris and I look at social media interactions, and Chris, keep me honest here, but it's really, those have to be managed. Don't get me wrong, but there was a time early on where we've got to manage those with our contact center. That's becoming less of a point of management for social media as it is marketing, or maybe even HR, or maybe a customer service department to escalations to oversee that. But we're talking more about those one-on-one, those interactions, those channels, and that's where SMS text and some point-to-point IM, and then the video side of it. We see that there isn't any video. I'll move to question 4, so you can kind of see the next question is, what types of interaction are you planning to add? And just Chris, as we launch that poll, if you have any thoughts and comments as we look to discuss these interactions and thinking about that digital engagement model.
So it's a good point on social, and I think not recent, but the past 2 years, we've seen a few, instances where social the responses to social queries didn't go well, and so we've learned that you need to treat social very carefully, because it's social and it's exposed, and if you don't do it right, it can go in a bad direction. And so while a few years ago that was certainly something we wanted to bring into the call center, and we still can, but it's something we want to be careful with. And video is interesting. I think it has a very specific place, and it's not seeing the agent. And I just, as we're rolling these things out, the customers don't want to see the agent. They don't need that. It's not looking for, this personal touch, I can see them as much. It's more initially being adopted by people who need to show the agent something. So I have a broken widget, here's a picture of it. And that's where the initial adoption is. And we're seeing an increase there, however, because pretty much everybody's carrying a camera around in their pocket on their phone. So it's more easily delivered. I am expecting significant growth for video, but where it applies and where it makes sense, where a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, specialized, as you mentioned, right? Some of the widget tech support models. Healthcare, I think is an adopter, a good example of adoption of video as you're looking at certain procedures and treatments or certain rashes. I know I'll be honest, I don't use it a ton, but I know our provider allows for an online connection to a nurse, and if video enabled on my end, I can share video through that feed. I have used it once, but don't use it a ton. Again, I'll be honest there. So let's look at the poll responses here for what the planning is. And we split web chat about down the middle. 50% had it, and the other 50% are looking to add that in. Voice at 32% of an adoption there. Email and SMS and text is I don't want to say through the roof, but wins it at 74%, right? So how do I bring that into my contact center as a channel of communication? Yeah, there's generations now that are being almost being defined around around simple messaging and text and instant messaging. And you ask them to pick up the phone, and I look at my son, he's 16, right? It's like he either he's setting up these text messages, sometimes group messages, and it just requires a one-on-one conversation. I'm like, why don't you just call him? He's like, he looks at me like I'm crazy. What, Dad? What do you mean call him? Nobody's going to answer my phone call. They'll respond to my text. But so it's interesting. It's a changing dynamic, but it's easy, right? And you can attach other modes with it. You can attach a video or a picture with that SMS interaction. So it's very interesting. I knew that would be a high percentage, but I didn't think it'd be that high. I knew it would be up there. That's interesting. Chris, you have any thoughts around that?
The same. That's remarkable. It does. Again, I can't say I'm terribly, but I am surprised the number's higher than I thought. And the initial applications we're seeing are using these to complement other interactions. You might be in a web chat and you could you send an SMS with directions to a claim center. We're seeing a lot of integration with it, and now this new trend towards it being an the sole interaction, just like a voice call or a web chat. Good stuff.
That's cool. So let's look. Let's dig in a little bit deeper to 5.9 and the benefits of a cloud contact center. And Chris, if you don't mind, I think I'll hand the baton to you. But again, this is I want to tee up some of those key values and then what you're seeing set 5.9 apart in the industry. So I'll work to keep kind of advancing the slides here for us, and we can jump into some of these benefits.
Awesome. So on the left side of this slide, when we first started this, most of us came from on-premise environments, and we built an ROI calculator. And in the ROI calculator, we listed out all the components of an advanced, what at the time was a multimedia contact center, as well as some of the human components of it. And it was a very, very long list of things. And I think that really spoke to the complexity of those on-premise environments and what our customers had to deal with. And if you're going to reinvent this, take advantage of what you got. So if you look on the right side, really you need to log into our application through our portal, plug a headset into your computer, and you can process calls. Now that's actually true. It can be that easy. I will say the reality is we're going to work with you to make sure that there's security and connectivity and quality of service. There's other components to this. It's, sometimes we compare ourselves with the trends of CRM that has largely moved to the cloud, but we are sending voice calls, and we give you multiple options for how to process those, and it can be this simple. But as Mark mentioned, ROSI and 5.9 work together to understand the customer's needs and requirements for the multiple locations to address it. But we have achieved this. We have achieved that first of all, make it easy, and that's really what we've done. If we go to the next slide.
Let me get a click on there to make sure it moves for us. There we go.
Awesome. So really, the challenges that we saw, we actually built 5.9 based on these challenges, and I think that the interesting thing is, you want to run your call center, okay, and that's your job. And what happened as all these new requirements got put on the on-premise call center is you spend more time running your contact center technology than you do running the call center, contact center, and that's really where we've tried to so you can run your business, go do what you do instead of trying to run all that technology and all those applications. And we know and we live that challenge all the time. We kind of call it the on-premise headaches of, okay, I got a new project, I need to bring up 100 seats. What does that mean? How fast can I do it? And I think if we go to the next slide again, Mark, thanks. That's really where we're making the big change. We're really addressing that. It's what can we take advantage of and what headaches can we take away? So first of all that complexity from your IVR and ACD and dialer and CTI and all our world's three-letter initializations, let's wrap them up and make them easy and things you don't have to worry about. Oh, and you need to add 100 seats for a new project in a different site? Okay, that's not going to be 4 months. We're going to shorten that time and make it easy. Oh, and you need to take that down because it's actually just seasonal because of the holiday season? No problem. Pay for it when you use it and not when you don't. So all those concepts, really we want to bring it to, use the benefits the internet promises and the delivery method promises and make sure we deliver that to our customers. So it's really about taking all those headaches away, making it easier too, and I think that's a big piece of this. If we're going to reinvent this, traditionally this has been a hard thing, a complex thing to run. Why can we make it easy as well? If we're on that reinvention piece, you want to build a new workflow, we shouldn't need some kind of programmer to do it. Or we want to run a report, we shouldn't need to go find the one person in the company who knows crystal reports. We've tried to change all of that as we've reinvented that and then deliver it easily. So we'll jump to the next slide. Oh, go ahead, Mark. You have a couple points.
Well, and as I mentioned before, it's getting into a current premise environment that may be challenging to update that, just to add and integrate an additional digital channel into the environment. So we've actually seen some enterprise level businesses that look at an adoption model, a cloud adoption model that carves off a component of their business and leverages a cloud contact center, without changing their complete infrastructure model, and creating that much disruption within an environment. And disruption is good, but it can be challenging at times as well. So don't get me wrong there. But again, it's a certain model of adoption that, as you look at your business and think of it, some environments, yes, holistically movement to the cloud makes sense day one, and there's no reason not to. Other businesses look at it, and there's oftentimes other reasons where a stepping stone approach kind of makes the most sense, and that's that kind of takes us to the next and kind of final topic of discussion here around testing the waters, with AeroSI and 5.9, and kind of how to make that move and where do I start. And Chris, I'll see if I can advance this through here for us. And looks like the audience view is coming through now, and let you work through even more detail around and not a ton, but we're going to get more into detail around the 5.9 benefit and in the model and how the 5.9 approach has been successful here in the industry for other customers.
And
so Chris,
to summarize
I'll hand this back to you.
Thanks. To summarize it's we think about the primary tenets of what we're trying to achieve here for our customers, and one is be flexible, and so a lot of these around that encompass that. The other is be easy, and maybe easy is not the right word, maybe it's straightforward. People in marketing will pick which word's most appropriate to say, hey, this is not a challenge to work with. The other is go at internet speed. Okay, this is our customers and the next generation is expecting things to happen faster, and we need to be able to keep up with that. But we also we have to consider security. We have to do two other things really critically. We have to be secure, and we have to scale. And those are things you shouldn't have to think about. You should say, these are our security requirements. This is our security audit worksheet. Make sure you address it. And that's all part of really this. And what we've actually learned a little bit, which is interesting, is we've been able to actually deliver security beyond even some on-premise deployments. So because of as we've kind of had the opportunity to reinvent the contact center. And the last piece, as I mentioned earlier, is take away the headaches. We've all been through upgrades. Whether it's in the contact center or just on some other device, it can be painful. So we need to remove all that pain, keep everybody kind of on one universal version to make everything easy for everybody. That's really been kind of an unsung hero of the value the cloud has been delivering. Go to the next slide.
That's very That's very cool. Let me get us advanced here.
Or if you have some, Mark might have some comments here too. Right, this is just a little bit about us. We were born in the cloud. We might be one of the very few vendors who've been born in the cloud and doing it for more than 15 years. And the result of that is, we have far more deployments than any other vendor out there, and our customers stay with us. And I like to address this particular one is we're delivering an application to our customers, but it's still a contact center application, and it behind the scenes there's a lot of complexities that we try to keep our customers from dealing with, but it's still a contact center. And I think one of the reasons we retain such a high retention rate and our customers love us so much is there's a big people factor here. And that's really, really important, is that, I used to say, contact centers are 50%, contact center technology is 50% the application and 50% of the people. And this is definitely part of the 5-9 philosophy. And then you add that in with just making things easy. Okay, you need to be up and running in a short period of time. That's our specialty. You want to be able to control and maintain everything, but let's say the business users start to have more control over the actual flows. We can do that. You need to spin up chat and email and social by next Tuesday. We can do that. So really, all of these play into what 5-9 has learned and done. It's really remarkable that 15 years have really made this into as much of a science versus an art as we can. But you add in the people part of that, and it's really just made the difference for us.
Yeah, and we, just to a couple comments around that. So we did an extensive review with a team of individuals within Arrow, different levels of the organization, executives, architects, et cetera, and as we were evaluating, and we challenged each organization, really with very similar topics and requirements to this, and the 5-9 ability to respond to that, the ability again to execute, the ease of the execution model, just really came forward in our evaluation process. So it really plays well into favorable into their overall solution. And again, the fact that this is what they do, right? It's all they do, and we're excited. We're excited about the alignment. Let's see if I can advance us here. All right, Chris. A little continued advantage, a little bit more detail from some bullets here for us to speak to and discuss.
And this is just covering some of those pieces that we mentioned a little earlier, but we've tried to take advantage of the fact we had that opportunity to reinvent things. So, there were tenets. We didn't want you to have anything special on your desktop, say maybe beyond a headset to plug in and process the phone call. But we give you options. With Arrow, we can leverage a lot of the existing infrastructure that's there. You can use the phones on the desktop, despite what many people may tell you. I'm trying to figure out if comfortability is in the dictionary yet or not. I think it just went in, but we see that a lot. It's like, we have these existing Avaya phones. We want to continue using them. Can we do that? I'm like, of course you can do that. If that's what you like, that's what you can do. But on the brain side of it, we want to make it easier too. So, we've actually done things like we've combined the what we know as IVR and ACD into kind of one workflow, one flow that can do its database diffs, but also know what agents are doing at the same time, and then make that as easy to use as Visio. And again, what's also remarkable, we have all those telco connections. We have massive quantities of capacity. We even have massive quantities of standby toll-free numbers. So if a customer comes to us with, say, I have this need and I need to get up and running very quickly, we can do it. I will say this, experience-wise, a contact center is not something you should rush. But I can certainly say we're not burdened with the need to drag in hardware, we need to drag in trunking, even though it's mostly SIP now. All that is much, much easier for us. And then the other piece of that is the integration side too. What's happening on the desktop? We're born in the web. So our ability to interact with other web-based applications is native to what we do. And then that final piece is, of course, it's the human side, and I can't emphasize it enough. Contact center, even though we've made it look really easy, behind that are a lot of people making sure that you're happy, that our customers are happy. And another reason we're partnering with Arrow is that same philosophy. People are a really big part of contact centers. They're not just the people in the seats, but the people running this technology, the people making sure the technology stays running, and the people helping you make those moves, adds, and changes. And if you go to the next slide, it kind of backs this up a little bit.
Yeah, I challenge, real quick. We had some data from Gartner and other other firms, when we were talking about some of the trends. But I challenged Chris with current data. Where are the analysts at? And I know many folks look to Gartner as a research firm across really, be it on-premise contact center, be it the contact center as a service, which is what we're looking at here. And lo and behold, we've got some good data that in information. And Chris, I'll let you share the information. But it was a challenge that I put out as we were bringing things together for the discussion today. And there was some pretty good information. If you're not familiar with with the current 2016 Magic Quadrant, I actually we'll send out a link. Five9 actually purchased the rights to view and share, so we can get this out, the actual full report out into your hands. But Chris, I'll let you point out some of the key feedback here from Gartner.
And we're remarkably proud of this. And the big message is Five9 doesn't just talk about it; they execute. They don't just say, we've got happy customers. They have those happy customers. You can talk to them. We're delivering on what we say we're going to deliver. And that execution piece is really, we're just remarkably proud of what we've accomplished. And as I mentioned, I believe this is largely in part to two things. One, the ease of use of the application, the ability to configure and deploy quickly. And two, the people behind it. Execution always involves people. So when we combine those two things, it's no surprise that we remain and we've been there for a few years, actually highest in execution among the vendors.
That's great. Let's talk about a couple of those successful deployments and those stories around the execution.
Yeah, first is actually one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, and I think this is a great example of testing the waters. Actually, they had a new project. So they're actually offering kind of a concierge option for people using some of their medications. Some of these, as you even talk about complex now, how you use your medications. So they gave a concierge option, and they wanted to get this up and running very quickly, and there was a decent amount of integration. I believe they have several thousand seats of an on-premise platform, and they considered, expanding that, but it could not meet the timelines, and it could not meet the integration requirements. They couldn't meet some of the unique customizations they needed. There was actually an SMS component to all of this. And we were able to roll them out very quickly, under budget. And what they did is they started small. And we do this, let's go in there, we talk about forklifts in our world. We are not bringing a forklift here. We want to complement what's already there, get in and do a good job. And if we get in there and do a good job, what's happened and tends to happen is we find more opportunity. So they've already grown this initial greenfield project to 400 seats, and there's a lot more behind it. So we continue to grow, and the reputation of our success gets out within a given company. Another one is a very large U.S. bank. They had actually a blended need. This was mostly voice, inbound and outbound, with integration to a web-based CRM. And the requirement was significant, and they they had to upgrade their existing equipment as well as purchase additional components to deal with some of the outbound stuff. When they came to us, we actually were able to demonstrate exactly what they wanted in a short amount of time and get them up and running, I think in this case, in a matter of 4 to 6 weeks. So the speed of deployment gave them what they needed very, very quickly. Another thing was the connectivity piece. As a bank, security was critical, but the time frame was critical. So we had that hybrid flexibility to start them with a secure connection, but not dedicated. And then we started off there with a relatively big group of agents still, and then they went ahead and added an MPLS connectivity for a completely private option, over time, while maintaining that level of security, we're able to add all those additional quality of service components to it. So very similar, and again, we just continue to try and do a good job, and then things expand. But we're not walking in as a team and saying, go get rid of what you just invested a ton in. We want to complement it, maybe leverage a lot of the existing technology to make things an ease of transition easy for the agents, but also try to simplify, make things easier where we can.
Those are, Chris, those are two great examples, and really leads us to, really the offer of, extending the conversation with both Aero and Five9 experts, and, aligning with you and your business to, to discuss your challenges and your needs, and determine how we can align Five9 potentially with within your organization for your contact center needs, for your cloud contact center needs.